Welcome back to another episode of the Road Racing 360 show presented by 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law. We've got some more news coming from the sport of road racing this week. First action on track with MotoGP was coming at us from Qatar with the first official test. We've got some social media beef involving Jorge Lorenzo and some other current riders in the paddock. And then we've also got an update to the World Superbike schedule with the addition of a new track. Big thank you again to our show sponsor, 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law, for making it all possible. They ride, they race, and they know the law. If you've been involved in an accident or wrongfully injured, give 1833 CJ Knows a call. They are incredible. They'll get you all sorted out. Earlier this week, we got to start off with the MotoGP test. We finally saw MotoGP bikes on track all together, and not just the test riders, like the official riders. It was our first chance to see most of these guys actually riding their brand new bikes, and we got to learn a little bit before the season gets started. Now, just to cover over the results of the first 2 days of testing, we saw Fabio Quartararo top the sheets. He is the test hero for the first round on his brand new factory Yamaha. Second, we saw Jack Miller on the new factory Ducati. And then third was another Italian factory, but this time it was actually Aprilia. Aleix Espargaro was much farther up than he normally is in third during the test, so it's good to see Aprilia with a brand new bike maybe having their stuff together. One thing that you look at the results and you do notice is the top five is 5 totally different manufacturers. So that, if that's any indication for what the season is going to look like, it's going to be somewhat like last year, where it's fairly unpredictable and there's going to be quite a variety of different manufacturers that are able to be competitive and potentially win some races. Now, as you see the full results up on the screen right here, you can take a look at that. I won't read it off to you and bore you, but there is that, so you can see what things are looking like after 2 days of testing. Now, while this first test is done and over with, there is a second round of testing, a separate 3-day test also at Qatar that is happening right now. Now, as far as the testing goes, we will bring you a full video talking about everything that happened there. That way we can kind of touch on all the extra stuff that we don't have the time to in this episode. A couple first impressions that we got from the first round of testing. One of them was that Fabio Quartararo is somewhat back to his old ways, hopefully. At the end of last season, Fabio seemed to be having some issues getting along with the bike in many different conditions. Well, it seems like he is sort of gelling well with the bike this year. While I am really happy to see this, I am not fully convinced that he is back to himself in 2019, where he was consistently taking it to Marc Marquez and battling right there up front with him, just due to the fact that him and Maverick Vinales traditionally have been leading at the end of these test sessions and are always up front in testing. And then the season comes, they win the first couple of races, and then they start to fall off. So I won't jump on the Fabio for champion 2021 bandwagon just yet. I want to get some races under his belt and see where he falls after that. And is that Jack Miller is getting along pretty well with the new Ducati. Now, what changes and everything they are going to settle on remains to be seen. We saw some new aerodynamics during this test, and Jack looked pretty comfortable. He finished second, and so I'm thinking that he's going to be battling for some wins. That win eluded him last year. He came really close multiple times, but didn't quite get it on the Pramac Ducati. Having full factory support, I expect Jack to be up there and winning a few races this year. Another is that we saw Pol Espargaro on the new Honda for the first time, and while he wasn't at the very top of the timesheets, and he wasn't even the fastest Honda rider during this test, he did show that he was able to make some big improvements from day 1 to day 2. So I'm thinking once he is able to acclimate to the Honda that is sort of notoriously difficult to ride, I think he's going to be a contender for sure. We've seen Marquez obviously kind of master that Honda, whereas many other riders have struggled, and it's taken them more time to get to grips with the new bike. Seeing that Espargaro seems to be acclimating to it more quickly than others, I think is promising and is going to yield pretty good results for Honda, especially once we get to the midseason and further on. We saw Suzuki try some new things. Overall, their bike looked pretty good. Their riders seemed to be promising while they weren't at the top of the timesheets. That's not really a shock, as far as outright raw speed over one lap. That's not Suzuki's specialty, so I'm not really concerned, even though they're not right there at the very top. They're still plenty close to the front that I get no concern out of it. Another surprise was Johann Zarco. I can't really say it's a surprise either, because he did so well on the Avinci Ducati. Now that he's stepped up to the Pramac squad, he's looking really good. He's been competitive, he's close to the top of the timesheets, and I think his race pace, as well as his raw qualifying speed, is going to show that he's going to be a contender for multiple podiums and hopefully some race wins throughout the season. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a second round of testing going on, so I won't really dive too much into that. While we are recording this, day one has finished up, and Jack Miller was the fastest from then. Absolutely blistering pace. He set the new outright lap record, which I suppose is unofficial since it wasn't during a race weekend, but nonetheless, he did go faster than any motorcycle has ever gone around the Qatar circuit, so it's looking pretty good for the factory Ducati guys. Fabio Quartararo was not far beyond him, only less than 1/10 of a second behind. It was not far behind, and to round out that top 10, it looked something like Maverick Vinales in third, then Johann Zarco, Pol Espargaro, Aleix Espargaro, Joan Mir, Alex Rins, Pecco Bagnaia, and Taka Nakagami. So overall, it seems from test to test, the order is shuffling a little bit, so I'm sure we have yet to see what the fastest these guys are going to go, considering we still have 2 days of testing yet, so I'm sure they've got new parts to test. More things they're going to throw at the riders, and I'm expecting to see that pace drop a little bit more, considering it is only day one of this second test session. But again, that's going to be a separate video where we touch on everything that goes on in these tests, so stay tuned for that. Right about a week ago, we also saw the brand new Aprilia for 2021. Now, we didn't get to include it in last video considering it came out the day that we put out our last episode, so now I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. As you'll notice, it does look quite a bit different from last year's bike, mainly the aerodynamics. It's got this weird winglet on the front that kind of looks like a drooping mustache. But obviously MotoGP is not just a beauty pageant. It obviously has a function. And based on the testing times, it seems like it's working pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see if Aleix Espargaro and the Aprilia guys can take that fast lap from what he was setting during a time attack and continue that over race pace. The other thing I want to see in the new Aprilia is reliability. I think that was one thing that hurt Espargaro and his teammates last year, was that the bike was not totally reliable, which ended up with them having a lot of DNFs. So what good results they were trying to get were sort of squandered by mechanical errors. Aleix did say he was really pleased with the new bike, but riding it took a little bit more work. He said it was definitely fast, but it took more muscles to get the bike around the track. A lot of this is due to the new aerodynamics. It makes the bike a little more difficult to ride, but over a lap, you can complete that lap faster. So over the last few days, there has been social media beef between previous MotoGP champion Jorge Lorenzo, Cal Crutchlow, Jack Miller, and Aleix Espargaro. A lot of it stems from a picture that was posted by MotoGP on Instagram. It came from a picture that showed Cal Crutchlow having a tip over in his new role as the Yamaha test rider, which was actually a role that Jorge Lorenzo occupied last year, albeit he didn't really do a whole lot in that role. Partially due to COVID, partially due to the fact that he wasn't really in shape or prepared to do the job they needed. So Cal is now taking that role. Lorenzo, when that first was announced, had some critical comments, and then after this crash, Jorge Lorenzo pretty much just posted, "I told you so." And while he is a 5-time world champion and is not entirely wrong as far as Cal being a notorious crasher, it still did stir up some comments. Coming to his defense was Jack Miller, who is good friends with Cal Crutchlow. He sort of got into it with Lorenzo, and then Lorenzo commented back with something pretty much along the lines of saying, you need to focus on riding and winning races, not on social media. And then there was another mess with Aleix Espargaro, and Lorenzo came back at him with another comment, pretty much saying, I don't know why you're still in MotoGP. You haven't won a race in the MotoGP series in the 17 years you've been involved. So if you want to check out the whole social media beef, go to Instagram, go somewhere else, and you can see all the posts and tweets. But let it be known, Jorge Lorenzo is not just sitting back enjoying retired life, keeping his mouth shut. He's just saying it like he sees it, and whether that is in favor of what the other riders think or not, he doesn't really seem to care. When he was asked about it, he said, "When I reply to someone on social media, I don't give them the importance that others give them. For me, it's kind of a game and I'm having fun." He also said, "I have always said that I would like a world in which people say what they think. That's what I try to be. I've always admired people who are like this, and I've always wanted to be like this. Once I was like that, but I had to be careful because I represented a number of brands. Now that I represent a lot less and I don't have to give explanations to anyone, I'm even more myself and I say what I think." So what do you guys think? Are you on the side of Jorge Lorenzo that he can say what he thinks and he's not wrong about his comments that he says? Or do you think he should kind of just keep his mouth shut and enjoy retired life? I mean, I've seen people on both sides. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. So to touch on a meaningless preseason award, Ducati claims the right as fastest bike in a straight line. This is not really a surprise, as Ducati has had the upper hand in power over the last handful of seasons, but they retained that over the offseason, coming in with the top 5 positions for max speed. On that, it looks like Honda lost a little bit of ground. Suzuki found some. Good thing the Yamaha handles well, because top speed is not exactly their forte right now. And while top speed isn't everything in MotoGP, there is something to be said for having a fast bike. For some of these guys, you've seen Yamaha riders have to work extra hard to keep up since they were losing out ground on the straights, which in turn causes them to push harder and occasionally either wear out their tires or crash later on. At a track like Qatar, this top speed does tend to play a little bit more of a role than some of the other tracks that don't have quite the length as far as front straightaways go. Qatar has an extremely long front straight, and the Ducatis hold almost an 8 km/h advantage, so pretty significant, and we'll wonder how that's going to play a role come the first race. We've seen it allow Andrea Dovizioso to take wins over Marc Marquez in seasons past, and whether that's going to be the same case for a Ducati rider this year remains to be seen. Moving on to World Superbike, we have another schedule change. If you watched a couple episodes ago, you'll remember that the Assen round that was supposed to open up the season got postponed to later in the season. Well, unfortunately, a schedule change has happened again, which has pushed the opening round in Estoril back to later in the season. So that means we have a new opening race, and it is starting later than initially planned. So the new opening round is going to be in Aragon, and that's going to be May 21st through the 23rd. So it's crazy. We're going to go almost 6 months into the new year before we even get a World Superbike race underway. Another schedule change has been announced in addition to that opening round sort of shuffle. It is the Navarra circuit has been added. It is the 4th Spanish circuit to be in the World Superbike Championship this year, and the first time that World Superbike is going to this track. It'll be interesting to see what's going to go on with the new circuit and how the riders adapt, considering many of them have not raced there before. Some might have done track days or tested at some point in their careers there. For the most part, this remains an untried circuit where we're going to see who can adapt the fastest to a new track and get their bike set up properly. And to wrap up this week's episode, this is news coming from Racing in America, but not exactly Moto America. It's actually the Daytona 200, which runs separately from the Pro Series that runs in the United States. The Daytona 200, run by CCS and ASRA, has quite the roster lining up for competitors in this race. Nearly 70 entries for the historic race, and it's really interesting to see some of the people listed on that. Some of the notable riders include Kyle Wyman, who had won it last time they ran the race about 2 years ago. Tyler O'Hara, who has raced professionally for a long time, won the King of the Baggers in Moto America at the end of the season on his Indian. Michael Dunlop, the Isle of Man Michael Dunlop, is coming to the States, and he's going to be on a Kawasaki ZX6 for this race. Got Kevin Olmedo, Brandon Pash, Xavier Zayat, Dave Anthony, Sheridan Marias, Michael Barnes, Jason DeSalvo, Sean Dillon Kelly, Taylor Knapp, Danny Eslick, Andrew Lee, Jason Farrell, Max Flinders, and Dominic Doyle. This is a list of guys that have either raced on the world level or the national level and been extremely fast. So these are all dudes that have the potential that if they are riding well, luck falls their way, and they get their pit stops done, could win this race. It'll be really cool to see almost 15 big-name riders dice it up and see who comes out on top. So while the race won't be on TV, you can stream it live from anywhere in the world if you have NBC Sports Gold. So the way you can do this without it being extremely expensive and having to buy a year subscription is it is available to Track Pass users with either the Progressive American Flat Track Pass or the Track Pass All Access Pass, which involves all live events from American Flat Track, the ARCA Menard Series, and NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, and some other car racing series as well. So for $2 to $5, you can tune in to the Daytona 200 and see who comes out on top. And that wraps it up for this week's episode. We'll be coming at you with more news from MotoGP testing, as well as a wrap-up of the Daytona 200. Tune in next week for next week's show as well. We've got more content coming at you. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. Another thank you to our sponsor, 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law.